Hello and welcome to Events Dear Boy, the podcast for anyone involved in business events. If you're a conference producer, corporate event organiser or an events agency, then we're here for you. We share the highs and the lows, the best practices and the horror stories, and you can expect ideas and inspiration and maybe some laughs too.
And if you're a speaker at these events, then we're also here for you. We talk about how you do it, what makes speakers nervous, and how it all feels when it goes well or terribly.
My name is Catherine McNamara and I'm the marketing lead at the talent agency Pomona Partners and someone who's organised many business events in my working life. And alongside me is Pomona Partners founder and professional speaking veteran Tom Cheesewright.
Each episode, we're joined by a guest from the business events space, either an organiser or a speaker. We ask them to share their experiences, both good and bad, and their tips for other people in their positions.
And this week, I am delighted that we are joined by Simon Moore. Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm slightly intimidated now with that description from Tom as he's a sort of a speaking professional expert. So, yeah, let's see how this goes.
Veteran.
A veteran.
Yeah.
How do you like being described a veteran, Tom? Yeah.
I don't know, when you've been doing something for, well, I guess professionally speaking now for 13 years this year. Unlucky for some. Yeah, that kind of makes me a veteran, I guess.
Gosh, that's actually a veteran then. I've been speaking now for over 30 years now. So, yeah.
What does that make you?
Makes me, I should be in a retirement home probably somewhere.
This is like Jeopardy. So you're like answering the question before I've asked the question. Now I ask the question, which is, and what's your area of expertise, Simon?
Well, you would think it would be speaking, wouldn't you? But yeah, no, it's not. So it's actually psychology. I mean, I get a bit of an easy ride, Catherine, because I talk about psychology and most people are budding psychologists. So it makes my kind of, I suppose, speaking engagements that slightly more engaging because people are already on side because they're always quite intrigued anyway. I do manage to grate them in my personality though. So there is a bit of give and take in terms of that. But yeah, so it's it's anything to do with, human decision making, communication, engagement. How do you get people to sort of understand and remember what you might be trying to kind of impart to them?
Is it a bit like being a photographer at the moment? Like everybody thinks they're a photographer these days. Everyone thinks they're a psychologist. You have to sort of be like being a doctor dealing with people coming in with their printed out bits of the internet for their diagnoses.
Yeah, don't get me started on that, Tom. Yeah, it's that could be another whole series of. I spend probably half of my working life unpicking what so-called behavioural agencies and other psychology agencies who are ex-comms people, have done from out of a book. So yeah.
And how did you kind of go along this path to have and do the role that you're doing now?
Yeah, how did being a psychologist become being a speaker for 30 years?
I was tricked into this. Yeah, it's really quite an interesting story. So people who know me obviously sit back when I say this, but I'm not the most extroverted person. I grit my teeth and I know what I have to do. So I play the role quite well, but actually I'm quite happy in my own company. In COVID, I was delighted. I was sitting in my shed on my own, great. And I was doing a PhD at the time and my supervisor rang in and said, "Oh, I'm not feeling very well today. Do you think you could cover a session for me?" And I was thinking, I don't really want to do this, but okay, I'll do it. So he said, "Yeah, don't worry. You know what you're doing because it's in your area." And he gave me the room and he said, "It's for an hour." And he said, they'll be fine. They'll be delighted that it's not cancelled, that you can go and do something. So the way he described it was that I was going to go in and have an interactive session with about 8 people. So I wandered through the university catacombs looking for this room. And then I arrived and thought, this can't be right. This room's quite big. Maybe they couldn't find another room. So I kind of walk into it. And I walk in and there's like a steep, these old sort of fashioned banks, auditoriums.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I'm sure. And so I go back outside and check the room again. I've got the right room. So I go in And I think, okay, well, I've seen people hold little sessions in these rooms because, everything just might be booked out. So I kind of get in there, I sort of load up what I'm going to sort of roughly do. And as I'm doing that, obviously, typically the tech doesn't work very well. So I'm fiddling around on the floor with trying to connect things up. And, whoever was in there before has shut it down wrong. So I'm had to reboot the system. As I get up, I suddenly faced about 40 people. I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? This is not what I'm expecting. And so I'm sort of thinking, have I got the right place? I'm double checking everything. And by that time, there's probably now 120 people in the room. And I'm thinking, he's pulled a fast one on me here. And there's nothing I could, and what do I do? I'm at the front. Everyone's looking at me, expecting me to do something. So I kind of just had to go through it. Yeah, it was baptism by fire, basically. But I quite enjoyed it in a weird way. And I think that I would never have done this if that hadn't happened. I would have never had the confidence to go and do it. But I kind of come away from that saying, okay, you tricked me. And when I spoke to him about 2 days later, he said, yeah, I wasn't ill, but I just knew you could do it, but I knew you would never do it on your own.
Sneaky.
It was sneaky, but I'm quite grateful for him for doing it because, as I said, I would have not got off my own back and done it.
The closest I've had to that situation was about 20 years ago. I was organising media training for IBM, and it wasn't a deliberate trick. It was a lost in translation moment. Because we'd been going around Europe. We did Munich, Milan, Helsinki, Copenhagen, various others. We hadn't done Milan at this point, Moscow. And every time we'd had about, 14, 15 people in the room. So we're on our way from like Munich to Milan. I can't remember which way around it was now. And I call up the local contact and she says, yes, we've got about 18 people. I was like, 18? Yeah, 18. Brilliant. It's like, big group, but we can cope with that. We get there to find it's AT. And they've got 2 live simultaneous translators set up. It's just like we've gone from running a workshop to running a full day workshop to trying to run it for 80 people simultaneously.
And that's horrible when that happens, isn't it? It's just, because you kind of go, I'm prepared for 8. What do I do here?
You just have to throw yourself into the situation, don't you? We had a similar thing. We did a live podcast earlier this year and we turned up and I'm not sure how many people we expected to be in the room. In my mind, I thought it was we were going to be in a private room, and we walked in and there was like kind of cabaret style 200 people in a room and the whole stage set up. Okay, this is different.
Did you enjoy that though? Was it good? Those things are really great, aren't they?
It was brilliant. Yeah, really good.
Because
really
when you've not done that before, especially with a podcast, you do it live, you think, how's this going to work live? It's not going to work, is it? Because it's for people who are like, sort of, just want to listen to it afterwards. But actually, it works really well, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does. So listen, we know what your sort of area of expertise is, but how does that translate into the sorts of events that you get asked to go and speak at? What sort of stuff is it? And what format is it? Is it keynotes, panels? Is it Q&A? Or is it, and who's in the audience? Who's there?
Yeah, so it's a whole mix of stuff. So unfortunately, I mean, it's great for me because I've got a very chaotic mind. So I don't like to sort of do one thing at a time. So that appeals to me. But on the downside, though, it's very difficult to sort of pigeonhole me because I do all sorts. I can facilitate, I do workshops, I do keynotes, and that's at conferences across all sectors, but also internal stuff as well. I think a lot of speakers don't realize there's a lot of internal work that companies are doing. So that's quite interesting. When you talk to people, they go, oh, you're not at a conference. You're like, no, I'm doing it for, X. And they're like, oh, I don't even know what that brand is. And you're like, no, but they all do. They have to sort of do stuff internally, and it's quite interesting. So so it can be podcasts, it could be online, offline, it can be an out of industry kind of inspirational keynote, which I think is really interesting. So you go in and you might go into a sector that is maybe quite practical and logical. So for example, pharma, engineering, whatever it might be. You've probably done this a lot, Tom. And you go in and you sort of, you try to open their minds to other areas and other ways of thinking a little bit. And I always think those audiences are, they just sort of sit there and they're like, oh, I never thought about this. So I love doing things like that where you kind of inspire people and kind of give them other options. So it's a whole mix of things, which I love. It could be 10 minutes, it could be an hour and a half, it can be a whole day thing, it could be 3 days thing. I've been flown to do like 3-day interactive leadership workshops around the world. They're great because after day one, you got to know the people, and that's interesting because then how they like to be interacted with and how they like the delivery, for example.
Yeah, it's really good if you like them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know if they like me, but anyway, they're stuck with me basically.
So for somebody that was tricked into a career in speaking that isn't a natural extrovert, you sound like you enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what is it that you do kind of love about speaking?
I know there's a couple of actors that I know. No one famous, so I'm not going to name any names, but they always laugh because I think I might have told this story to Tom, but I'll repeat it because it's quite a funny story. So I was at one of these events. A big game company said, could you come and do some voiceover stuff for us about the psychology of driving and gaming? Because it's actually really interesting. And I was like, yeah, no worries. And they said, okay, so we booked the studio and we've got 4 hours of you to do ad-libbing about the psychology and the science of, what happens to your brain and why people enjoy gaming and, why it might be useful for sort of business and life skills. I was like, okay. And then they said, and then we've booked an extra 15 minutes to do, I want you to read just 3 lines. I was like, great. Okay, do that. So I've done all my ad libbing in an hour because, Tom knows this. I can talk for England, basically, if I need to. So I did that and they're like, oh, great, you did all that. Okay, we'll be done soon then. And I was like, great. So they said, right, here's the 3 lines we want you to read. 2 hours later, I'm still doing the 3 lines. So, and what happens is I'm terrible at this. So I could never be an actor. I could go on those, whose line is it anyway? Because I can ad lib quite well. But if you give me anything to repeat, what happens is I don't know what it is with my brain. I see the stuff, it goes in, I retranslate it into how I want to say it, and it comes out again. And in the end, the producer, I felt really sorry for her. She just got this massive piece of cardboard and just wrote the 3 lines on and just held it above her head and said, just read that. And I'm like, great. Why did we not do that to start with? So in a long way answer to your question, Catherine, it's a bit like acting. I go on, adopt a persona, and then come off and that's it, done. So, I think that works in lots of things. So, I've been doing a football podcast recently. And again,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people we have on, a lot of the football people we talk to said they do exactly the same as an actor. They go on, as soon as they get on that green, they are someone different. And then they come off again and then they're themselves. And I think we might probably cover this a little bit. And I think for speakers, I think they, obviously there's authenticity, great, but I think they have to feel that they have to be them. And I think what you have to do is just be comfortable in who you are as a speaker, which might be very different to who you are as a person, for example. And probably, Tom, you I don't know, you do that probably to some extent.
Yeah, it's a performance, right? And then that's part of, I share that appreciation of it as a performance. And I think particularly as a Brit, I might have talked about this before, particularly as a Brit, I think admitting that can sometimes be quite challenging. Like admitting that you like performing and then actually performing is a respectable part of the skill set. Yeah, we have a lot of this idea that it's all about your expertise and it's all about your credibility. And the people who should be up there are the most credible, the most expert. And actually those people are often not very useful to an audience. What you want is somebody with that blend of expertise and credibility, but also performance skills as well.
Yeah, and so there's some psychology there. Shall I bore you a little bit with the psychology about why that works?
Yes, please.
So, if you're talking about persuasion and engagement, what we know from psychology, there are 2 routes. There are people who are, if you're really bothered about something and you love the detail of it, then you need the facts and the figures. So logical arguments will go down great with you. But if you think about your life, how many things are you really bothered about? Not that many. Most of the things you're kind of like, yeah, God, I'll give it a go, or I listen. So the other model is called the peripheral model of persuasion. And to your point, Tom, most people are persuaded by, what do I look like? Do I sound like I'm confident? Am I saying a lot? If I'm saying a lot, I must know a lot. For example, they're fairly attractive. So actually, again, they must be likable. You know,
Massive disadvantage for you and me, Simon.
well, I was just going to say the same, but they're so. To your point, it is a performance, and I think people get really wrapped up in the fact that, oh, it has to be, I have to really be factual, and I have to be really accurate, and I have to really wow them with what I'm saying. And it's like, not really. As long as what you're trying to do, aren't you? Is you're trying to just maybe get them to remember something, or change their opinion, or challenge them slightly, or inform them. You don't want them to remember everything. They can't possibly do that, but you want them to engage with what you're saying, and to be engaging, you have to use these cues, don't you? How many times do we go? I hate it. And again, I'm sorry, Catherine, I might be speaking ahead of some of the questions, but in terms of events, and I know this because I've asked a lot of the audience. One of my bugbears about events is sponsored speakers. They literally just go through the motions, and it's a sell. And you can see the audience just slump. All the phones come out, and it just becomes really unengaging. And then you get someone else who comes in, and they might not be an expert in the industry, but you're like, oh, that's really interesting. And it's not necessarily what they're saying, it's kind of how they're engaging with you.
Aside from sponsored speakers, have you had any really terrible speaking experiences?
I did have one. So I was doing a keynote. Actually, it was the opening keynote for a pharmacist conference for Boots Walgreens in Monaco. And that sounds horrible, doesn't it? Having to be flown to Monaco.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, awful. And I just started. I was on my first slide, and all the lights went out and everything went off. And I was thinking, God, I couldn't have been that bad. I haven't said much. So I don't know why they've shut me down so quickly. But anyway, what happened was that there's a massive power cut in the place, and they couldn't get the backup generators didn't go on. So we had to wait a couple of minutes, and then the backup generators go on. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough power for the audio visual stuff. So although they could hear me, we had no slides, nothing. So actually, what I had to do for an hour was just talk off my head. Now, I could hear. So the first noise I heard was when they said, just carry on. I heard the whole audience, there's about 1,200 of them. You could hear them audibly suck in air. As much as say, oh my God, he's got to go like on his own with no prompts, nothing to go. He's like, how's this going to work? And you could hear them almost think, oh my God, I'm glad that's not me. But having said that, when the session was over, people came forward and said, I found that session really interesting because I had to just listen to what you were saying. I wasn't distracted by anything else. It was quite good, actually. It's quite old school, but you weren't, there was lots of pretty stuff and shiny stuff that you were sort of like distracting me with. I was listening. So yeah, it sort of turned around, but it was a bit of a uh-oh moment when that happened. Yeah.
Like those restaurants where you eat completely in the dark.
I've never been to one of those, so yeah, I'm not sure I'd like that.
Nor have I. I'm messy enough when there's light.
Yeah. Darkness or not having my glasses on, never a good experience, ever. But that, so you're clearly quite adaptable, and like you've said, you're happy talking. And
well, I'm happy talking. Whether people are happy listening to me, what I'm talking about, that's another thing, Catherine. So yeah. So I quite like a challenge. So I don't mind risk and I don't mind chaos. I'm quite impulsive. So that part of my character suits well to adaptability. I'll just roll with it. If something changes, I'm like, okay, well, let's just go and see what happens. And I know that doesn't suit everyone, and that probably alarms a lot of people. But I mean, a piece of advice I will impart is you just can't lock everything down. Something will go wrong. You'll forget to say something. You might move the clicker on too quickly. I don't think people really care.
That was going to be the next question. Actually, you've joking apart, you've got 30 years of experience doing this. What advice, what tips do you impart? Because certain things you learn in the moment when you have that experience when the power goes down. But practically speaking, what are some of the key takeaways that you would give to some up and coming speakers?
Well, I mean, he's done it, and I think Tom's very good at this. So It's
Thanks.
it's all right. So it's you know what I mean. I'll do the thing that you shouldn't do, which is just and I know this sounds really like but it happens so much where people just read off their slides and stand still behind a lectern. And it's just, that's the dullest thing you can do. It's like, well, just give me offline, give me the slides. I don't need you to tell, I can just read them myself. You don't need, I don't want you there just standing reading. So what I've learned to do very quickly was the slides I use are for me. They're not for the audience. They're prompts for me. So I use a lot of pictures because I can go any way with a picture. And I can have a slide of 10 pictures, and I could give a different lecture every time I, have those 10 slides. And I think one of the secrets is that you might think you've made a mistake, so you've forgotten to say something. How does the audience know that? They haven't seen your script. They don't know what you're going to say. They won't even know you've made a mistake. So I wouldn't worry about things. Just go with it. I would be authentic and natural. People don't mind if you stumble a little bit. People don't mind if you kind of fumble around and you're it's just part of being you. They like it. They don't want this, very trained robotic person up the front, because it's not very engaging and it's not very human. So we engage psychologically much more with other humans, and we empathize with them more when they're more natural. So I think, look, just roll with the mistakes. Don't worry about it. Keep going. And move around. Don't stand. Whatever you do, don't stand still. Be your psychology would dictate that. Yes, we communicate through our mouths and obviously our eyes, but we do gestures. We move around. We're looking for vision. So we're predominantly creatures that look for visual cues. So reinforce what you're doing with some body movements. Move around a little bit. Just kind of make people sort of watch. And the worst thing is when it's just static and nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's funny. The thing about the slides going down and operating in the dark reminded me of something that one of our coaches, Penny Haslam, taught me. Really, I'd got into the habit of making very flashy slides. This is how nerdy I am. I was writing them in HTML and JavaScript so they could do all sorts of weird and whizzy stuff on the screen, and incorporating GIFs and videos and all sorts of things. And Penny said something very simple to me, which is, they're not there to see the slides. They're there to see you. And the more you put into the slides behind you, whether it's loads of text, GIFs, videos, whatever, the less attention they're paying to you on the stage, and the less they can just focus on what you're saying. And I think that, stripping away some of that and just going back to that really human connection, it's hugely important.
Yeah. And I think, Catherine, to your point, to take it further, if you want to create a little bit of a name or a brand for yourself, then challenge. Don't just tell an audience what you think they want to hear, because they won't remember you, because everyone does that to them. If anything, make them feel a bit uncomfortable, make them squirm on their seats a little bit, make them think, hang on, what's he saying there? They might not agree with you to start with, but they'll remember you because they go, oh, that person's said something different to me, or they've been honest about something, for example.
So I guess they're your tips to speakers. How do event organisers get the best out of the speakers that they've booked? What would you say to them?
Apart from making sure their backup generators work.
Yeah. Well, one of the big tips I would have is I always ask an event organizer what actually disappoints them or annoys them about their audience that are coming. Because that gives you some ideas about what you could do to do those challenges, to kind of make them sit up and pay attention a little bit. So, for example, it might well be that, you go to a farmer conference and they're like, they're all about, they just want stats and numbers and graphs and bar charts and things. And yet, if you go and don't do that, it does make them pay attention, because they're like, oh, well, hang on a minute, this guy's got he's not talking maths or statistics to me. What on earth? What's he going to do? But it makes you stand out a little bit, because it's not the same as another, 16 kind of pages of PowerPoint slides on different statistical graphs. So that's always interesting, I think. And then probably ask them, because they've done some work on it, what are the current issues and problems that the audience might be facing? because they'll do their homework, because when they book in and create events, they will ask, they will have panels, they'll have representatives from that sector to say, what are you interested in, what's worrying you at the moment. And I think one of the problems and one of the bad mistakes people is they always try to present on what people are interested in rather than what problems they're facing. Because if you can go and if you can go in and give them a solution to a problem rather than just tell them some good things that they can use, I bet you they feel you've been more valuable to them. So that's a big tip. I think do both. Yeah, all right, tell them some stuff that they're intrigued and interested for, but also try and think about a problem they might be facing and give them some tips about how they might think about it differently, or where they could get some different kind of skills or people to help kind of resolve it, perhaps.
It's funny, just yesterday I was working on our talent map, the device, the sort of the tool we use to help speakers analyze where they're at in their careers. And one of the questions I was working on was about takeaways. Like, what tools or tips are you leaving people with that they can go back and use in their organization or their life? And I think that's a huge part of successful speaking and being memorable, which is, giving somebody a practical solution to a problem, something they can actually take away and use.
And you could do it in any sector. I mean, I recently went to, I'm going to name them. So I went to Cambridge United Football Club to do some training at their academy for all the staff there and the coaches. And I kind of realized what some of the problems might be and some of the bad habits they get into. And one of the things I said, just make the room go, they went really quiet and it almost looked shocked when I'd said it. And then afterwards, I got so much engagement from it to say that is so true. So the thing I said with coaching is that when you're coaching, boys and girls who are quite good footballers between the ages of, 8 and 16, I bet you pay more attention to the magical things they do and the mistakes they make rather than the consistent things they do. And that's life, isn't it? We do that all the time, don't we? We do that with our friends, partners, the things that they do above board. We go, well, thanks. And the annoying things we'd comment on, but the normal things that they do that are great, that just kind of make life roll along, we don't comment on. And so they're like, oh my goodness, we do that. So again, it's looking and thinking about things that people might take for granted, again, just challenge them and go, why do you do that? And they go, oh yeah, we do. Why do we do that? And it makes them then go, oh, what do we do about that?
Brilliant.
And I think that's a really great place to wrap up today's episode, Simon. That's been really insightful as always, and thank you so much for coming on. And thank you too for listening and watching. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave us a review, like, subscribe. Most importantly, share it with your colleagues, your peers, whether they are fellow speakers or event organisers, and we'll be back soon with another episode.